Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott, beginning its bicentennial year this year. When I was a pastor in Vermont, I would go to the nursing home and visit with folks there, and Ethel Bailey made me this painting that she had done. Now, if you're listening to us on the radio, put on your special glasses so you can see this picture of 3 or 4 flowers, long stems, and a little flower pot at the bottom. Ethel, when I visited her in her home prior to her nursing home time, didn't show any evidence of artistic expression. There were no paintings that she had done on the walls. But at the nursing home, someone would come in once or twice a week and they would work with everything from pottery to painting. And such pride was shown as these folks created, perhaps for the first time in their lives, or at least since primary school, they would draw a picture of the home in which they grew up, or flowers, or some beautiful view of the Green Mountains. It was not only something that they could take pride in terms of artistic expression, but often it prompted them to tell the stories behind the artwork. Well, that's our topic today, kind of. Mm-hmm. Memory Maker Project. The Memory Maker Project is a way to do art with folks who have some memory issues from Alzheimer's or other kinds of dementia. And my guest today is Christina Muscatello, and you are the co-founder and now the director of the Memory Maker Project.
That's right.
It's not Memory Makers, Memory Maker.
Just Memory Maker.
Okay. Tell me how this began. Let's look at the beginning of what led to its formation.
Sure. Do you have an hour?
We have 27 minutes and 35 seconds.
Okay.
That's right. And part of that's going already.
Yeah. So the kind of a bridge story is that I was working in Boston with the I'm Still Here Foundation, which is the leading researcher and practitioner of non-pharmaceutical interventions for people living with dementia. And we were doing museum tours that are especially designed for people with dementia so that they can participate. And then we were also writing books that are at an age, they're about age-appropriate topics, but they're written at a cognitive level, about a 3rd grade level, that somebody who is into a little bit farther into the memory loss process would be able to engage with.
Sure.
And the reason for that is that a lot of times somebody with memory loss is handed a children's book. And when you're 82 years old, you don't really care too much about Mary and her little lamb, because you know, that's just not something that's important to you. You might care about travel or your work or your family. And so once you're an adult, you're always an adult, and we try to honor that as much as possible by creating things that are more at your developmental level. You know,
I've been around, but this is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And so I was there doing this work, and it was so beautiful, and I felt like I grew up here in Binghamton with my grandparents and my mom, and we were on the street where everybody was retired. My best friend, when she passed away a few years ago, was 105. And a lot of the people who I knew and loved were starting to get memory loss. And I felt like I was so far away in Boston, and everybody else was here, and there was nothing like it here. So I really wanted to, I had it in my mind when I moved back that I really wanted to start this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with whom did you share this in order to get it off the ground?
Well, gosh, everybody. Well, the biggest person is Kim Evanowski. She was a really instrumental part of co-founding it in the beginning. She's a dementia certified social worker, and interestingly enough, I was working at the Council of Churches as the director of Faith in Action, and kind of mulling through a lot of these ideas. And Kim was the social work supervisor for 2 of my interns, and so she just really loved a lot of these ideas and encouraged and collaborated and helped me understand that there really is a need and a place for it.
Yeah.
And there is a big need for it. Statistically, 1 out of 3 people over the age of 60 will have some form of memory loss. 50% of people over 85 will have some form of memory loss.
Yeah.
And 10,000 baby boomers are turning 60 every day. And so if you think about the statistics, we're actually about to face a public health crisis if we don't do something about it now. And so I think of Memory Maker as one of the many things that needs to happen and be in place for what we're about to experience.
Let's move away from the organization for just a moment, but
Sure.
to look at what Memory Maker Project is. Tell me what you do
Yep.
with folks.
So we do, our mission is art, culture, and advocacy for people living with memory loss. And that extends to everyone affected by memory loss, so their loved ones as well. So we have a couple of different programs. We have partnerships with care communities that are called mobile culture programs, and so we'll develop contracts with care communities like United Methodist Homes, for example. We go there once a month and we work on 2 of their different units, and then we do a series of programs that are art-based and culture-based. So we do poetry writing, art making. We're going to be doing a movie roadshow on Monday as long as the weather holds up.
What is a movie roadshow?
A movie roadshow is kind of an interesting concept. So somebody who is living with memory loss usually has an attention span of about 2 to 9 minutes. And so to watch a whole movie, it would be very challenging because you're lost after a little while. So what we do instead is that we mine for clips that are in many cases iconic, ones that would be very recognizable, but in other cases just things that we find very interesting that would touch parts of life that everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
And then we find clips that are between 2 and 9 minutes long that tell a complete story, so that even if you have never watched Breakfast at Tiffany's, you know that the girl meets boy, that they're in love, that there's some friction, and describing that last scene with the cat and the taxi, and then they come back together and they live happily ever after. And so then in between each of the clips, that we show about, depending on how long the clips are, between 5 and 7 clips. And between each clip, I come out, or one of my colleagues comes out with a list of questions that relate back to the clip that we had just shown, but it connects to your life. So if it was the end of Breakfast at Tiffany's, I might say, well, that couple seemed to be very much in love. Have you ever been in love? What does that feel like? And so it pulls out people's personal stories.
Wonderful. And so that's the movie roadshow.
Yep.
Tell me about the writing aspect of it, poetry.
The poetry is actually kind of a happy accident that I stumbled upon. So I went to graduate school to be an art teacher, and it was my actual degree is integrated teaching through the arts. So it's how you can integrate the arts into really any subject and use any subject to integrate into art lessons. So one of the lessons that one of my peers did when we were in grad school was a sensory poem. And it's, you choose a topic and you say, this feels like, tastes like, etc. And then you put it together into a poem, and they're so beautiful. And what I find a lot of times with people who have memory loss is that your word finding might be slightly impaired.
Yes.
But again, because you're an adult and you're still an adult, you have a whole thesaurus of words inside your mind. So maybe you can't find the exact word for stars, but you might say, my little friends. Or you might say, instead of I never thought to ask, you might not be able to think of that word ask, but you might think of to say inquire. So there's some beautiful poetry that naturally comes out a lot when we speak to people who have memory loss. And so what I find with the poetry writing is that we can really, first of all, we do it as a group. so that you don't feel too much pressure, individual pressure.
You don't feel that all the focus is on you.
Exactly. And we ask very open-ended questions based on a prompt, and then everybody has the chance to respond in however they can. And then we record everything that they say and put it together into a poem. And the pride and that everybody seems to show when we read it out loud, and then they'll kind of rearrange it and say, no, that goes there, or that goes there. So there's a lot of autonomy in that, and a lot of agency.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned early on that this is not just for the person who is suffering from memory loss,
Right.
but their families benefit from this too.
Absolutely.
And this certainly opens up a new door to understanding grandma or dad's issues.
Yeah. Yep. So another one of our programs that we do is, so that's called the one I just described, those are all called mobile culture. So we're in the care communities.
Can you find another word to describe that?
Yeah. the other main one that we do is called out and about. And those ones we go into museums, galleries, the theater. We're going to be collaborating with the Rockwell Museum and the Tri-Cities Opera, and doing an opera show based on art at the Rockwell. And we invite people who are living with memory loss and their loved ones to come to those events, and they're usually very, very intimate. And then we use the artwork or whatever artistic expression we're seeing that day as a springboard for conversation. So instead of saying, instead of saying like, oh, this is a Picasso from this year, you know,
all the facts.
All the facts. We don't do facts and figures.
Historical background
We'll
you
say
don't need.
no, not at all. We say, what do you see? What do you wonder? What does it remind you of? If you were there, which character would you be? Would you hang this on your wall? Why or why not?
Yeah.
And what that does is open up all of these avenues for somebody to talk about their own stories and tell their own, share their opinions. And what's very important about that is that a lot of people who are living with memory loss have choice taken away consistently.
Right.
So when you get to go to the bathroom, when you get to eat, what you wear that day, everything that we really take for granted just starts to kind of slip away. Your ability to drive, for example, these are all things that are so important as grown-ups. They're things that we worked hard for, and that element of choice starts to be taken away. And a lot of times people will shut down and kind of go inside of themselves. And so what this helps to do is show people, like, we really want to hear your opinion and ideas. You're a very valued member of our community, and please share what you're feeling and thinking. And the benefit for the people living with memory loss is amazing, and
Sure.
I can talk about that, but you were asking about the care partners. And what we see with the care partners is that a lot of times they're just facing such burnout, you know? It's the unspoken, I mean, it's spoken about a bit, but it's really a big issue. People put so much of their time and energy into caring, and often don't get a chance to do that for themselves. And what we also find is that a lot of care partners are so nervous about the diagnosis that their relationship with their loved one, they're frightened, of course, and it starts to kind of sever the relationship. So what our programs seem to do is create a common ground, and the person who's living with memory loss and their loved one are able to reconnect based on the artwork and the experiences.
Sure.
Yeah.
Our guest today is Christina Muscatello, and she's the director of the Memory Maker Project. And we haven't even gotten to the painting and the artistic expression on paper or canvas.
Yeah.
So tell me about that part of the project.
So when we do art workshops, what we do is we set it up very much like you're going into an art studio. We try to make everything just filled with as much dignity and normalcy as possible. So we'll have a theme for the day that's laid out in front of the person. So for example, one time we had the theme of fall, and I had fall leaves all over the table. And then we'll ask everybody to share a little bit about themselves, and maybe ask a question about the theme. So we'll say, like, what does the fall remind you of? And a lot of times what this does for people, again, who haven't really been talking or interacting, it gives them permission to say something,
Sure.
an idea or thought or something personal about themselves. And it kind of also lays the groundwork that for the next 90 minutes or 60 to 90 minutes that your opinion is and your ideas and your thoughts are going to be valued very much.
Yeah.
We had one guy who had just had a stroke, and he was very, very young, and he was having a very hard time with word finding. I said, what does the fall remind you of? And he said, diversity. And he was gesturing to the leaves, and I said, oh, diversity of the leaves. And he said, right, it's like diversity.
Yeah.
And he gestured to all the people.
Yeah.
And then everybody is invited to paint what they see or something inspired by our conversation or anything at all.
Right.
And so if you hear in that language, that's complete success. You
Sure.
can paint whatever you want.
That's right. That's right.
And so the same gentleman, he started painting a very intricate line design, and it was an orange line design that was, it almost looked like a heart. And it would have been very easy for somebody to walk by that and say, like, good job, Slugger, like, that looks great. But the way that we interact is that we'll say, will you tell me about your piece?
Yeah.
And so what that does is open it up to be whatever this is about might be a lot bigger than what we see.
Yeah. That's just like talking to a child about what you've drawn.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's
tell
about
me about your
anyone.
picture.
Yeah. And he said, he gestured to the leaf and he said, the veins.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, the veins in the leaf? He goes, right, it's like the veins.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, the veins in the leaves are like the veins in your wrist. And he said, right, we're all the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so profound.
Yeah.
And I don't know that would have come out without
right.
that interaction.
I don't want to forget
Yeah.
the Cocoa and Canvas event, speaking of drawings and that kind of thing, holding
Yes.
up the poster, very ineffective, but there it is. Cocoa and Canvas, a warm winter party and art auction coming up on January 26th at Atomic Tom's. I just love the idea of Cocoa and Canvas.
Yes.
So what's going to happen at the event?
Okay, so the Cocoa and Canvas is our yearly fundraiser. The idea is that it's the time of year when we all feel isolated and alone and cold. And that's
Cabin fever.
Cabin
Yes,
fever.
right.
And that's a very similar feeling that a lot of people with memory loss feel, that isolation and loneliness. The Memory Maker Project, our mission is to get people out of that feeling and pull people more into an engaging
Sure.
atmosphere through the arts. And that's what this fundraiser does for our general community. So everybody is invited to come, and we have jazz music. There's a soup bar and mulled wine, hot cocoa. We're going to have mug painting this year with kapow. There's
The mug painting isn't
Yeah.
painting my face. It's
not
painting
painting. It's painting
cup
a
and-
mug for your
Okay,
hot cocoa.
okay, all right.
And then we also have an art auction where we showcase the artwork of people living with Alzheimer's, and we'll auction that off
Wonderful.
along with local fine artists.
Yeah, and this is a fundraising project for the Memory Maker Project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's coming up on January 26th at Atomic Tom's. Tickets are $30, $35 at the door, and you can get tickets where?
So you can get tickets at the Garland Gallery, which is on Washington Street in Binghamton,
Right.
or you can get them online. You can go to memorymakerproject.org, and it will direct you to where to get them.
Great. I went to memorymakerproject.org to see what it was all about. It's a wonderful website.
Oh, thank you.
And it's easy to negotiate, and it tells you all you need to know.
Thank you.
And we want to also mention that this is a project of the Center for Transformation Action. Just a sentence or two about what that means.
So the Center for Transformative Action is an affiliate of Cornell University, and their entire mission is to foster social entrepreneurs who would like to be nonprofit. And so we partner with them. We're one of 27 organizations that are under the umbrella of CTA, and they're our fiscal sponsor. So they do all the things that we don't want to do behind the scenes.
So that you can do the actual.
So we can do the actual work.
The art.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when you put a brush in someone's hand or a pen and say, we're going to write poetry, What about the pushback? Aren't there folks who say, this isn't my thing, or I'm not an artist, I don't have these skills?
Yeah, we have lots of tricks up our sleeves about that. There's a phrase that I like to say when I was taking an art course. We were doing huge paintings. I think they were 6 foot tall and 3 feet wide or 4 feet wide.
Yeah. That's about me. 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide. Yeah.
And everybody just kind of was sitting there staring at it. It was just this blank canvas, and nobody in the class was making any move. And my professor said, you know what, guys, just dirty the page. Just dirty the canvas, get out some, in this case, it was like some sepia tones, and we just dirtied our canvases because we just couldn't, I think of the idea of putting a mark on this giant board, but once it's dirtied, then you feel a little bit more permission, I guess.
Right.
So at the beginning of most of the workshops, I'll say something to the effect, I'll kind of tell that story and just say, so just dirty your canvas, just make a mark and see what happens. Just start anywhere. We're actually working, so we do get a lot of pushback actually, and one of the things that we're working on is coming up with kind of a brief intro about other artists and saying not all art is realism.
Yes.
And like maybe showing a Picasso and saying like this sold for $7.8 million, so yours could too. And just to kind of show that art is not just one thing.
It doesn't have to look like a photograph.
Exactly, exactly. Because honestly, I think probably most art doesn't look like a photograph. And so we really need to impress upon people that whatever they make is considered art. Yeah.
Sure, sure. I was at a poetry and art workshop on Rocky Neck in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I did this a couple of summers. I guess it was like Monday through Friday. And one of the things that Carol St. John did was to take some butcher paper and put it on a table. And then the 12 of us in the class, she said, all right, we're going to make a garden. So just everybody take a color and start doing your thing on the butcher paper, and then rotate. So you move over a little bit and somebody else comes in. So one person's doing a flower, somebody else is doing some grass, somebody else is doing a butterfly. And when you're finished, you've got this huge, wonderful collage, I guess. And she said, I don't want to see any butcher paper showing through, so you have to cover the whole thing. And that was wonderful. There was no pressure. It was just playful, and it built us as a group.
Right. Oh, I love that idea.
Well, that's free.
I might borrow that.
You can use that.
Yeah.
Free and postpaid. The connection. You talk about memory making. This is not memory recovery, but you're making memories. How does that work? A couple of minutes here.
Yeah, that's kind of. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll give you the science. I think that might be the quickest.
Yeah.
So the part of the brain that will never deteriorate throughout the entire dementia process is the amygdala, and it's where your long-term memories are stored. It's your fight or flight response. It's your emotional center, and it's also where the arts are processed. So while the other parts of the brain might be deteriorating, that part is staying strong. And so what happens is that I always think about the art as like a little boat, and you can get on the boat and go past all the parts of the brain that are not working as they used to, and then you go straight to the amygdala. And so what happens there is that you're creating emotional memory. So we might not be some people do start to remember us. A lot of the more consistent programming that we do, people see us and they immediately sit down, get their work brushes out, they're ready to go, or they come, they sit down in our semicircle, ready to talk about the art. And many people even start asking the kinds of questions that we ask. So there is a lot of memory forming, but it's also the biggest part that when I think about memory maker, what I'm thinking about is the emotional memory. And so the emotional memory can last hours and days after doing something enjoyable.
Yeah.
But we do have so many people that start to remember us in any way that they can, or start to remember the experience. I had one woman, after we talked about roller skates, it was a really funny story about her going on a date with a roller. She didn't want to go on a date, she wanted to go out with her dog on roller skates, and it was just this fun exchange. And a month later, I saw her, and I was like, well, and after the program, I said, did you enjoy yourself? And she goes, well, yeah, but that wasn't as fun as roller skates.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I suddenly had this image of a dog on roller skates, but that's not what you meant.
It was, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Man, I'm learning something.
Yeah.
The Memory Maker Project, once again, before we close, I want to talk about Cocoa and Canvas. It's a fundraiser, a warm winter party and art auction. So some of the art that folks have created will be available for sale. And even that will tell wonderful stories.
Yes.
And January 26th from 6 to 10 p.m. at Atomic Tom's. And for more information, you can go to the website for memorymakerproject.org. That's easy to remember.
Yep.
Thank you for being with us and describing the project. I'm fascinated, and as you said, another hour would be helpful, I think, if we talked a little bit about it. So it moves from, there's poetry, there's art, there's theater, there's film, and in order for folks to get in touch, and if they're living, they have someone at home or a family member or a friend with dementia, how can they get in touch with you? So
they can give me a call. My number is 607-240-6204.
Do that one more time.
607-240-6204. Or they can go on our website, memorymakerproject.org, and all the information is there. And pretty much if you click register or contact or anything there, you'll get to me.
Wonderful.
Or one of my colleagues.
Well, that's how I got to you.
Yes.
So it was easy as pie. Once again, Christina Muscatello has been our guest with the memorymakerproject.org. And it's a wonderful project, and Cocoa and Canvas is coming up later this month. So I'm Jeff Kellam, thanking you for being with us on the Encounter program. Our thanks to WBNG TV and to Town Square Media for airing the audio portion of the program. I hope that in the coming week, you'll be gentle with people and with yourself. We'll see you next week.